All right, Photo 330, here we are. So I'm going to kind of walk through this Premiere project now. I've given this to you so you can walk through and see what I've done. But aside from me kind of stepping out and putting everything in place, I'll show you what I did for setup here. We have multiple layers, and what I did was I started out by just taking my project, and actually let me move these out of it. Save it quick. I set up a project start. And what I used was this for timing. So I basically put in the scratch track in the background for timing and reference. And then I went in and set up all the elements for animation. So I basically kind of worked with a base timing. I ended up tweaking this later, but I worked with a base timing. So I went in and started with my flag. And then I had all the text elements kind of time and come in as they would. I just stack these as video layers. So you can just basically, if you want to create new video layers, you grab objects in and move them around. It automatically kind of creates them. So I did this just within Premiere by taking and working from the Photoshop files to start. But the question you might wonder is, how did I do that? So I'll show you first. What I did was, with my pre-built Photoshop file and everything layered, I ran a file import and I went to my Photoshop file, which I have organized in a graphics folder. And I picked this one up. So I'll import this. And basically, when I import it, I have all sorts of choices of what I want to take. So if I open it up, it's either going to merge the layers or I can take the individual layers, and that's what I want. So I went in and I unchecked my background layers because I'm not going to use them. I wanted my flag, I wanted my text all put together. So I said OK, and it took it in as a folder of sub elements. So I could click on this and it's just like footage at this point. It's just the text, it's just the flag. I can go through and utilize all of that. So what I did was I basically dragged those one by one as elements into the timeline and set that up and utilized it. So one thing I should point out is I did make my timeline fit the project as well. So what I did was I made from file new at the top, I chose sequence, and I went in and manually chose my sequence. So this is the benefit to learning how to manually choose your sequence as opposed to just forcing it with footage and sourcing it from footage. I went in and I chose a digital SLR preset to match basically what most of you are shooting at, and I chose a 24 frame per second preset. So I chose the 1080p 24 frame per second preset and basically just started out with the edit. From there, I went into actually animating the flag. So I'll kind of point out how I did that. We've used keyframes quite a bit in this class already for audio, but basically now I used it for video portions. So let me just mute this track so you can see. What I did was I enabled the keyframe on this to keyframe the opacity, and I just faded this in as it moved forward. Now there's some other stuff going on. I did a color change. Unfortunately, we can't see that in this layer. So what I did for that is if I select this layer and go up to the effects control, these are all effects that I put on. So I used the lumetri control to actually animate the color of this in combination with the position and scale frame. So there's a lot of kind of keyframes going on here. I'll show you what I did. I basically just went in and instead of using opacity keyframes or audio keyframes like we've done in this class so far, I used the little keyframe to add remove keyframes and apply this flag animation as we have here. What I think I'll do is I'll just kind of show you how I did that in the start phase, and then we'll go back and check out the rest of it. So here's the start phase with my audio applied. I want it to fade up, and then I want the color to shift in. So what I did was I took this and I added a keyframe at the beginning. I'll just go way in so you can see them. Just clicking the little keyframe icon. I went ahead to where I wanted it to fade in. I added another keyframe. So this is at 100% opacity. I then pulled the first keyframe back to fade it in. And yeah, could I have used a cross dissolve or a dip to black transition from the effects menu? Yes, I could, but this should fade it in. All right, and there it is. What I then added to that was a scale and position as well. So if I select this and go up to the effects control tab and check the motion, I'm going to do the same thing with scaling. So I'll scale this to be at 100%. You know, as it fades in, it'll come up to 100%. And then I went back in time a little bit. And what I did, just so I can see the fade, I'm not going back too far, but I started with it scaled up. And then I just moved the keyframe around to change the timing, because again, a keyframe is just a distance, basically a variable change over time. So if I wanted to start back where the fade is, I need to have my keyframe move back. So now it's going to fade in and move. The last thing that I did was maybe worked with positioning a little bit too. So if I wanted to be off to the side, I could put like a position keyframe just to show you. Oops, we'll put it at the end. Position keyframe at the end. And figure out where I want it to start from. Maybe I want it to start over here more and kind of move as it comes in. I didn't really do this specifically with mine, but there's kind of a movement to it as well. So that's how I kind of did the base motion, is all just with keyframing. I took that and applied that further by adding the color changes to it. So I just clicked on my Lumetri color control once so it would add that as an effect over here. So back to what we've done with keyframing color, I just went in and did some basic correction and used keyframes at the beginning. So you got to click that little stopwatch to start to add that first keyframe. So temperature, tint, exposure, just as an example. And while it started out normal, I wanted it over time to change. So I went well ahead in time and changed that temperature and tint. And I can just grab that in the Lumetri control here, tint it, take the exposure down. And now it's going to animate in and change over time. And that's basically how I did that part of it. Now I haven't even gotten to the text yet. So what I did next after working with the text was, or working with the flags intros, I went on to kind of embellish the flag so it had sort of that flashing effect. The sequence that says flag start shows sort of what I did before that, so I just walk through. And the sequence that says flag end shows what I did after that. So in flag end, I went through and basically after applying the effects, I just took the razor tool here to cut it up, and I cut up the track to kind of have this flickering effect so that there's basically, you know, the video track is chopped up. The trick is that it actually maintains all the animation properties because it was originally one clip. So the result is, as this plays back, boom, we'll let it roll through and animate in. After that point, doing the text is really kind of a similar thing that I did with the flag. It's all just motion that I work with. So kind of what I'll point out that I started with is the key thing is I originally worked with my animation timing to go through and just anticipate how I wanted it to work with the specific audio that I used. So then when I came to the end, I went through and applied these in position, then went through and actually animated the text. So after the flag comes in, they animate into position, and I'm animating basically a position change of each of these along with a opacity change at the same time. So beyond this, you know, that's kind of the basics of it. Is I just set that up and utilize all the tracks for timing. And after this point, I was kind of ready to go. So what I could do is I could animate and I could export a video of this that I could then use in all my other videos as a production leader. Or if I really wanted to, I could import this project into another Premiere project and utilize the sequence like a video clip that I could kind of edit. So that said, it's a quick walkthrough. My intention is to get you enough that you can start and work through and do something. Other than that, I'll cover a couple other techniques in class, specifically In finishing, I'll take a look at the difference between standard keyframes, standard keyframe interpolation, and using easing to sort of smooth the way motion works.